Hi. Nice to see you. I'm Nicole Georges. I'm being assisted by Tanya Georges. You can call her Tanya if you have a problem with the P sound. And this is our panel. It's about community, creativity, and comics. At the last minute, I wanted to rename it Shine Theory in Comics, but it was too late. So here we are. I would like to introduce my guests to you. I have really, in a super helpful way, my slideshow is across 2 different review platforms. So it will be a little bit janky. But I want to start to my right with Ariel Schrag. Ariel Schrag is the author of the graphic memoirs Awkward, Definition, Potential, and Likewise, the novel Adam, which is currently being made into a movie. I don't know if I was allowed to say that, but I just got it. Okay. Her latest graphic memoir, part of it, will be published in November. Please welcome Ariel Schrag. Over there, hither, is Jennifer Camper. Hold on. I really feel like the best thing we can show right now. Jennifer Camper is the creator of the Queers in Comics Conference. She published one of the first queer anthologies, Juicy Mother, and she's the author of the comics Rude Girls and Dangerous Women and Song Girls. Her work explores lesbian lives, Arab American stories, and more. Please welcome Jennifer Camper. And this was my favorite of these. Oops, I learned this much. Last, but absolutely not least, is Kat Fajardo. Kat Fajardo is an award-winning comic artist and illustrator based in New York City. She's an editor of La Raza Anthology, creator of Bandita Comics, and cover artist of The First Rule of Punk, written by Celia C. Perez. You can find her working at her Brooklyn studio, creating playful and colorful work about self-acceptance and Latinx culture. Please give it up for Kat Fajardo. I'm Nicole Georges. I'm the author of Calling Dr. Laura and Fetch, and I make a podcast called Sagittarian Matters. And I wanted to do this panel, which I actually already did in my dream this morning before I woke up. It was this room, and it was this panel, and I actually already said all the things I wanted to say, and had like the stumbling points, and then like the small victories and the lows. And then I already did this panel, what I'm saying, but then I woke up and I was disappointed that it hadn't already happened. But I've been making comics for 20 years, since I was in high school, at which point I did find Ariel's comics when I was in high school in Kansas, and I was very happy her comics existed. We'll cut to that later. But I've been making comics for 20 years, and whenever I give a professional practices talk, and I write on a piece of paper a map of my career, I find that a lot of the things I did for no money, that I only did to create culture and to support my community, are the things that led down the roads that got me any attention or any money. And so I thought it was an interesting idea to talk about being creative, but also being collaborative, and the benefits you can gain from that, be they spiritual benefits or money or career benefits. So that was kind of the hypothesis of this whole thing. And I have a psychotic-looking map of my career if anyone cares to look at it later. So if I'm starting to my right with Ariel, I'd like to show your slideshow. Will you talk us through what is on the screen?
I really selected these kind of randomly.
Perfect.
I can tell you anyway.
Okay, hold on. Is that yours?
That's mine.
Okay.
This is the definition of community. Although maybe in a sense of how now online communities are so important to people, it could be. Although that particular image takes place in the late 90s, when there was no, at least for me, online community. That was just me writing thoughts into a vacuum. This is from my book, Likewise, just some romance happening.
Nice, that's the
Yeah. This is the cover of my novel, Adam. And this is an interesting slide. This is an interesting image to show for this panel, even though I selected it at random. It's this is from my book Likewise, and it's me at a concert of my friend Toby in high school, who was in a band called the KGB, and I used to go to his shows all the time. And I was so jealous because, I mean, there he was as a musician, like on stage doing his art, and everybody's like screaming, and yeah! And like as a cartoonist, that just never happens. I mean, you're alone at your desk, and then you're alone at your desk when maybe somebody's reading your book. I mean, now people are kind of doing like slideshows of their comics, and I've done a bit of that, and that's been amazing. But in general, this never happens. And I think that, but I have found sort of ways to try to make it happen. I toured with Sister Spit in 2009, where we kind of all went up on stage and did our spoken word. And it wasn't maybe quite as raucous, but like people were into it. And
can you say what Sister Spit is?
So Sister Spit is it's part of Radar Productions, a company that Michelle T founded to support queer art, and it's kind of a touring spoken word for women and queer people we went all around the U.S. and Canada, and we would each get up and like perform a piece. And that was an amazing experience to me, to get to feel part of a community that was based around my writing, because so much of my writing had been in isolation. And I do think there's a inspiration to this, although nothing really beats being a rock star, let's face it.
That's such an important thing, is when you're a cartoon, I feel like almost like these kinds of things to me are my equivalent of a concert. Like coming to a mocha kind of thing and getting to meet people. So people are like, isn't that stressful? It's like stressed fun. Stressful fun. Okay. Jennifer Camper, let's go over to you and your slides. They're a little bit out of order, so I'm just going to show this one first because it was my fave. Will you take us through?
So yeah, that is. You're on it. It has an animal in it because I know you love animals.
I do, and I love chickens.
Yeah.
There we are. Okay. I'm sorry about my.
Oh, there's no order. Yeah, this really isn't. This is just a cartoon to show you what I did. This is a section of a longer comic, and it's the concept of feminism. And what is it? I think in comics there's a sense of community, of the community of cartoonists, but then there's also the community of your readers. And it's interesting to find that your readers are in multiple communities and sometimes have very different perspectives, and so that your comics have really confusing results often. Like when I read this one publicly, I always have people yell out feminist or not, and then they yell out feminist or not as I go through each panel. And different crowds have very different reactions. This is another example of community as a cartoonist. This is the first page of a cartoon that hasn't been published yet, but it's going to be in an anthology of comics about menopause. And anthologies are a really good way to find community, because people are reading this book for one or two particular cartoonists, but then they stumble on new people. And also, when you're in an anthology, you kind of become siblings to all the other cartoonists in it. And I edited 2 anthologies, Juicy Mother 1 and 2, and it was a really great way to publish people who don't normally get published, and also we all have fond memories of those events promoting that anthology. So yeah, anthologies rock. This is a New York cartoon. Okay, so I do Queers in Comics, which is a biannual, bi-coastal conference. It's every 2 years, and it switches from New York to San Francisco. The next one will be in 2019 in the spring in New York City. And every conference has an artifact. And this was from the San Francisco one, and I have a few here, and each side is different, and there's queer creatures' heads drawn by 40 different queer cartoonists.
I'm in there.
Yes, you are.
Are you in there?
She's in
I
the,
also had Deborah
the Deborah
Payne.
card. So this was from the first one. I think there's a slide of it somewhere. Oh, and these are the conference program. There's the card there. And I put you guys at the top. Nicole and I both wanted jokers. And there's Ariel.
4.
You chose that? Yeah.
Some people chose favorite number. But again, it's like, we do these artifacts, I call them, and they are limited edition, and we sell them to fund the conference. And then it's just a really cool thing. And, you know, it's here and it's gone, but part of the conference, part of the reason we do the conference is to document our history, and we videotape everything and archive it so people can see it. Yeah, community. This is an excerpt from a cartoon about being Arab American, and that's another community I'm a part of. I'm half Lebanese. My cartoons are read in the Middle East, and they have a very different perspective on queer culture. So I've had some of my friends who lived in Lebanon or Egypt who say, well, I can't show your work to my mom because I'm trying to convince her that lesbians aren't psycho killer that most of the cartoon characters of mine are not necessarily the best. So again, you know, you're as a cartoonist, you're dealing with a lot of different communities, and I think listening to their reactions to your comics in a broader way.
Yeah, ladies having a Me Too moment.
This was written in the early 90s, which tells you why nobody read my publishing background. And I like to do stuff about kids who are not what normally people talk about kids. You know, like when I grew up, this is more the kind of kid I was. It's very interesting when you talk about children who are gay. That's a big, scary place for a lot of people. In our culture now, we're very open about some sorts of sexuality, but we have a huge taboo about children being sexual. So that's an interesting topic and a whole new part of the community to talk to. This is a poster from a queer cartoon show in 1990. And what's interesting is, so I've been lucky enough to be part of this community of queer cartoonists since actually the 80s. And a lot of us, you know, it's pre-internet, so we all found each other through various ways. And it's been an incredible amount of support. So any of you cartoonists, find your gang. It's really important.
What if you're straight? What do you do?
Straight gangs. There are people who are very well connected.
Right.
And you know what? They have their right to have comments too.
This is a panel of generosity. We all have a very supportive spirit. Straight people, there's a place for you. Right. Well, hi, Roberta. Hello. Hello. Can you talk us through some of your slides?
Absolutely.
Great.
Yes.
We're a little out of order.
Excellent. So this is actually a comic based on Latinx like remedies, which I kind of grew up with, such as like stomach aches, just like lemon and lime juice that would help. So yeah, it's like a series of just like remedies that I grew up with, and I kind of just wanted to show our culture, and it's something that some of us are proud of, some of us are just kind of embarrassed by it, but yeah, it's part of my like Bandita series. It was short stories about like superstitions and like remedies and just like family stories. And I think that's
There's the cover.
there it is. And so yeah, I'm just gonna say something, but I gotta bring it apart.
Feel free to go back on.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the cover I did for the first show punk, which is a really cool experience. I worked with Skyler, who also did this sister as well. And that whole journey was really great.
She has been such a lovely person for years and years and
most kind of recent project, the Ross Anthology, which is a collection of short stories, comics, illustrations, and poems by Latinx artists from all over the world. It's like there's some from the US, there's some from Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, and so it's kind of like we have about 30 contributors, or even more. And so this was a really big project. We had a Kickstarter for it about 2 years ago, and it's one of those projects where it's really big and you don't expect it to take up like most of your life. So it's like, yeah, it's like, oh cool, we have a Kickstarter that's funded. It's gonna be easy from now on, right? No, it's like, goddamn. But yeah, it's one of those experiences where you kind of like learn the hard way, like just like the experience of editing a bunch of people and their work and how long it takes. For me, after having this Kickstarter, I kind of realized I'm not really suited to be an editor because it takes a lot of work. But it's one of those like experiences you have to go through in order to like kind of see if it's right for you. But yeah, just recently we started shipping out like books, which yeah.
It's a big, you know what, I did a Kickstarter for my project with senior citizens.
Yeah.
And then we had a release party before we sent out the Kickstarter thing, and my sister trolled us.
Oh
My sister wrote to our Kickstarter and was like, hey, are you guys scamming me? Where's my book? I saw you at a book party. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not stealing your money.
Oh my God.
Okay.
You realize you have like a life outside of like, you know, this project.
Fair. I'm like, I know you paid the exact amount of money for printing and shipping, but I can't actually take a year off work to do. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So these are more of your comments.
Yeah, this is part of the remedies. And so yeah, this is from Manila Volume 1. Volume 2 is coming out with more remedies that I grew up with, but also just like some that my friends grew up with as well. This is my mini comic Ringa. I feel like this comic kickstarted all the like Latinx representation like comics that I've been making. And this particular project, it's an autobio comic about my experiences dealing with like racism, assimilation, and all those fun jazz as a first generation immigrant. First generation kid from immigrant parents. I don't know if I added some pages to it yet, to the slide. Yeah, there we go. That's the first one. So yeah, this one was like kind of, I started this project as like a diary entry, and I thought at this point I just graduated from the School of Visual Arts, and I didn't really like the work I was producing because it didn't have like an impact on me. So I just took pages from my diary, illustrations and stuff, and I just made it into like I think it's 17-page comic. And from there on, I kind of just like that kind of work I was producing. Yeah, it was a very personal project. And this is, La Liga is a collective, it's a scene collective, and it's basically a group of Latinas that produce a lot of like magazines and work about topics that Latinx deal with. This one in particular is about like herbal medicine, stuff that we grew up with. And I think this cover was for the English version, and we had another version for the Spanish as well, so it's bilingual. Oh, cool. So they're really great about that. You guys should follow them.
And then my slides, I want to talk about my first, I feel like, you could just guess. This is one of my poems. It's a dog. So,
It's an amazing book.
yeah, thanks. That's mine too. So I want to talk about shine theory for a second, and I just want to ask you guys to riff, if you will. I have a lot of pointed questions that all lead to the same place. So for people that don't know, shine theory is something that was, that term, I mean the concept I think feminists are familiar with, and feminist working models and intersectional working models are familiar with. But shine theory itself, quote unquote, was coined by a woman named Aminatou Sow from a podcast called Call Your Girlfriend. And essentially it's like, if you shine, I shine. It's like, if I rise, you rise. Like it's better for me if I bring my community up with me as opposed to a competitive model of working where it's better to hold people down and feel there's a scarcity of whatever the goal is. And so I feel like in my practice, in my work, in my podcast, in my teaching, whatever, I have greatly benefited from people bringing me up with them, like Michelle T., the lesbian writer from San Francisco that started Sister Spit. You know, she spotted me doing something, brought me on Sister Spit, and that's how I met my literary agent, which is how Calling Dr. Laura happened. And if she didn't have that kind of spirit of community and helping younger artists and come up with her, I would never have had those things, and I'm so grateful. So then I try to pass that along because I've benefited from that my whole career, you know, as a young person having mentors and feminist role models helping me and giving me opportunities. So I just kind of wanted to talk to all of you about how shine theory or that kind of idea of helping other people or involving other people and lifting them up with you either has benefited you or how you have employed that in your process or in your work life. And it doesn't have to be like, you know, that on the nose, just anything that comes to mind.
Well, I was telling Nicole right before we started that, and this relates also to Comics Being So Lonely, that me and about 7 other New York, New Jersey-based female cartoonists over the past couple of years have made a habit of gathering every month to draw together. And we sort of informally call ourselves Girls Comics. And we just trade off at each other's houses, and you know, some of the people in the group are people that have been close friends with for a very long time, such as Gabrielle Bell, and others are cartoonists who I've only met from coming to the group. But it's created this feeling where these are people that I think in another world I could potentially have felt some sort of competition with. Like if I saw that one of them got a book deal, like, oh, that girl, and whatever, like. But I would never feel that now because they are my friends, and there's a sense of pride in that community that was built. And I think ideally, like that feeling will now spread to everybody, like, you know, even people that I don't know. But I think having a community and having people that you sort of get together regularly with to do your craft makes a big difference in that sense of well wishes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember when I was just starting out, you know, seeking out cartoonists and, you know, just asking them all these questions, and many of them were kind enough to listen to me and give me advice. And so I wanted to recreate that for other people. And one of the things that we had in the 90s was a conference called Outright, which was for queer writers. And they always had a couple panels just for cartoonists. And there was a whole group of us who would go every year and have wild parties. And I don't remember much of what happened, but we all had a community from that event. And that's why I started Queers in Comics Conference, because I felt like there was no place where cartoonists today could meet and have that. And what's great about that conference is that everybody at that conference has somebody who came before them and somebody who came after them. We have people from like the age of 18 up to their 70s. And there's this very interesting timeline of work. And so people who had mentors are now the mentors to the next generation. And I loved seeing things, you know, come across the internet, and I go, I know those two people met at Queers in Comics in 2015, and now they're working together on a book, you know. So it's not only having community, but creating the spaces where community can exist. And those of us who are later in our careers need to always be mindful of creating those kinds of communities.
Yeah, community is very important. I would say especially for like minorities, because I feel like we build a community and like in a sense we're just like encouraging each other and also recommending jobs and stuff. And I feel like sometimes I don't really feel that way in the comics community as much. I mean, that's been changing quite recently, but I feel like I feel more comfortable in the zine community because it's very much personal. And as opposed to like, you know, when you're making a graphic novel or a comic, you're kind of alone in your room, just like with no personal contact with everyone, you know. But in zines, you kind of just like riff off like other people's ideas, and you kind of just collaborate into making this a beautiful like zine. And I think that's where anthologies come from as well. Like it's a very great way to bring communities together and like friendships, and like also more opportunities for jobs. And you just, I don't know, I feel like, especially for like all the, they host like events for other Latinx artists and creators, just like kind of just work together and just have like, you know, like parties and kind of basically, yeah, like just push each other. Like I love that.
Well, not even to monetize it, but, you know, I feel like it's twofold. It's like, you know, you could just do your comics in a vacuum, but then if you have an anthology, then all these people, all of their networks, like you're getting boosted by all of their networks knowing about this project you're doing. So you're seeing your comics maybe for the first time, or if you have a conference, like I've organized a couple of conferences, and a lot of people I know now because I organized the Portland Zine Symposium or the Midwest Underground Media Symposium in Kansas City, or, you know, worked at a place where I was helping other people, and then that got my name out there to them. So I'm not saying like it's all monetary, but we were talking about too, you know, comics is so isolating, like you mentioned, and so it is also kind of spiritually feeding to get yourself involved, even though, you know, also you're mentioning like doing an anthology is hard. Doing a conference it leaves you a little bereft at the end of the weekend. You're like, I just gave all my energy out, and also I'm kind of an introvert because I'm a cartoonist. I'm making assumptions. But, you know, it can really get you out of your isolation, because you find when people, or I find, and historically, cartoonists that are just like competitive and work focused and just sit in their room doing comics, they go crazy. Not in a cute way, but like in a way where they self-harm or are in deep depression because all you're looking at is a wall and the page, and you're not even getting paid that much to do that.
Also, conventions are great, and like theme festivals as well, because you get to meet other people and kind of not feel crazy romance.
Yeah.
I want to say that there's two sides to this community point. One is that what you were saying is putting out and doing events, public things, organizing stuff for other cartoonists. I mean, if you edit an anthology or work on a conference or a zine fest or something like that, you will meet so many people, and later on down the line when you do your Kickstarter or you need help with some project, those people will come back. So you're kind of, by doing all this kind of work, you're not necessarily getting paid, but you're banking a community of people that will be there for you later. The downside is that you can put all this energy into these events and you stop having enough time and energy for your work. So you have to balance this stuff very carefully, and a lot of what you put out there, you don't know what's going to come back. You know, oh, this person who was in my class 10 years later is now an editor and is publishing me. You know, you just can't predict what's going to happen. So it's all about like throwing stuff out there. And you know, 9 out of 10 are going to be just like lost, but that one is going to be great. But you do need to very carefully monitor your time, because you can get caught up in doing the free public community building stuff and not doing your own work.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to side note and ask all of you, do you have any hot professional practices tips? Either for your former self, your younger self, beginning cartooning, or things that you go by now. Because one of them, when you said that, made me think of, I always tell students, be nice. Be nice to everyone. I'm so irritable, and I'm so cranky, and I honestly, like when I don't like someone, it's so easy for them, it's easy for me to just be like they can just tell in my face without me saying anything. But you never know. You never know if the person who's like the most annoying person there, who's an intern now, might run a publishing company someday. Or they could be the personal assistant to a billionaire who dies and gives them all their money. Like, you don't know. And it's not just for game, just to be like, game the system, be nice to everyone. But honestly, like, you don't know when you're going to have to be in a small space with that person. You just don't know. So my best professional practices tip, which I would also tell my former self, is be nice to everyone and don't be a pain in the ass. If there's a deadline, meet the deadline. If they ask you to do a thing but they don't tell you the specs, ask the specs. How big? What format? When do you want it? How do you want it? Don't wait till the last minute and be like, they didn't tell me, so it's poster size and it's a TIFF and it just like crashed their server. So what? Take personal responsibility and be less of a pain in the ass would be my tip to myself as little as 5 years ago.
I don't know that, I
feel like you just wrapped it up.
Oh, no.
I'm trying to think if I have anything to add in terms of tips. I guess, I guess don't be afraid to present your work publicly more often, which I think is something that cartoonists are shy to do often, but to kind of take, anytime somebody asks you to like be a part of an event, to just say yes. Although saying no is also very powerful, an important thing to do, but that's more when people ask you to like write them a 10-page comic for free for their like online zine or whatever. Like you don't always have to do that, but with the stuff that you care about, to just take every opportunity to share it.
Well, Ariel, when do you say no, and how do you guard your time? Because now you've been doing comics for so long, I'm sure you get a lot of offers to do a lot of things, some of which probably pay a little bit, but that still don't fit in within you.
Well, basically, like I would never, I would almost never do something for free that was new, that I wasn't going to do anyway. But like, I would reprint something for free, and it was like, you can get copy right away. And you kind of have to juggle a bunch of things, but essentially, yeah, you just create like a standard for yourself.
There's many opportunities that come your way. And then there hits a point where you have more opportunities than you have time. And then you develop a little checklist in your head, like, I'll do it for money. I'll do it because I love the project. I'll do it because you have this little checklist. And then you start saying yes and no to things. And it kills you to say no at first, because you're coming from a place where you're hungry for opportunity. You're like, oh my God, someone asked me to be in a zine, I'll do it. Someone asked me to do this, I'll do it. And then suddenly, everything you say yes to means you have to say no to something else. So then you have to be really careful about what you say yes to. And it helps to have that little checklist in your head. Like even writing down at some point, so that you don't have to agonize over everything. And I have that little checklist in my head, so when people say stuff, you just go, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have the time. Boom. That's how you say no. You don't explain anything. You don't say, I hate you, I think you're trying to stop. You just say, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't have the time. And people will accept that. You don't have to go into a 4-paragraph thing saying why you're not doing it or anything like that. And get really good at saying that. Get that checklist in your head so you can just instantly go yes, no, and it saves you so much grief later.
And it kind of ties in with like checking in with your mental health as well. Take breaks when things you can. Try to see if you can fit certain projects to your schedule. If not, then practicing. And just take it easy and have fun, really, with like projects.
I have a friend that went to art school, and I was like, what did they tell you there before I started teaching at art school? Because all I have is a sandwich artist certificate from 1996, so that's my qualifications. But I was like, what do they teach you in art school? And he's like, well, I had a teacher that said every project needs to either have money, freedom, or time. So I have this pie chart in my head, and so when that's my checklist. So when people ask me to do a thing, and they're like, well, we give you very little money, and we need it tomorrow, and we're being very specific, I'm like, Or if I feel like I'm going to disappoint them. Like now I know that when I do portraits of people, and that person's going to look at it, they're going to be disappointed. If it's their dog, they're going to be thrilled. But if it's them, they're going to be like, well, can we give you a few more pictures so you get my chin right? And I'm just, I'm like, I just drew what I saw, man. It's artist interpretation. And they're just going to be upset on us, edited a million times, and we're not going to like each other. So I try to do things that I know will make people happy, or things that aren't hard for me to do. So I want to know more about community involvement. A side question I have that's like veering off the path and taking the word community and stretching it is, all of us come from kind of different marginalized communities in some way. And there is some power, like Kat was saying, in uniting. If you're in a marginalized community, if you walk into a space and you're like, this is a space that's male-dominated or white-dominated or whatever, if you have a pack of people, your age or your gender or whatever kind of person, you feel more powerful if you walk into anything with a pack. Also I teach MFA students, I'm like, you guys are each other's posse now for all time, for better or for worse. You're going to walk into a show and be like, we're 8 strong, we can all share a table, You know, eight people for one table visit, it's great. But I want to know, do any of you feel the burden of representation from being from your particular community in your work? Or the burden of being part of a community, and like there's a lot of weight to that.
Well, I had some experience with this. I mean, I wrote comics about being queer in high school, and they were, pretty much, received positively. Maybe like some, disgruntled, prejudiced people on the internet. But for the most part, it was like I got only positive reactions to these autobiographical depictions. But then when I wrote my novel Adam, which is about, the premise is a cis straight teenage boy pretends to be a trans man in order to date a lesbian. It was met with it was a little bit more complicated. A lot of people had problems with that premise, problems with the way characters were depicted in the book, because the book kind of satirizes the world that I came from, the sort of mid-2000s queer and trans world in New York City. And it was really hard for me to hear really negative responses from people who I consider to be part of my community. When I felt that, the book was coming from a place of love of this community that I was a part of, I think a lot of people assumed, one, that I wasn't a part of that community and was just making fun of people, or that I was and I was betraying people. Whatever it was really kind of almost like a whiplash effect to be like, oh, but you're supposed to be supported by your community. But it was also it felt important that you can't just always please everybody all the time, and to be able to receive criticism from within your community is really important. Not just from the sort of enemy who you can write off, but from people who you want to listen to.
A lot of it comes from how much is out there. So if I'm writing a comic about an Arab dyke, if there's no other comics about Arab dykes, then this is the only representation that people are going to have. And it's got to be the perfect Arab dyke, and give her wings and a halo, and she's got to do everything right. So, gosh, she's just like us. So I did that comic. And now my Arab dykes are like, hired assassins and killers and all kinds of fucked up people. And I feel like, well, there's more than one Arab dyke cartoon out there, so I can have good Arab dykes, bad Arab dykes, in between Arab dykes, whatever. So if you're doing a comic about a character that never has existed in comics before, you're going to get all kinds of scrutiny. But if you're doing a character that has other versions of it, then you have more freedom.
From my experience, drawing and writing comics about race, you're always going to get something from either side of the group, Although I do get a lot of people, commenting in like kind of positive way about my comics because they relate to it. There's always going to be someone that's like, why aren't you talking about, Afro-Latinos? Or why aren't you talking about like indigenous Latinx? And I can't really speak from that experience because I'm neither from either of those communities. And so I sometimes get requests about why can't you do, organize another anthology for those communities? And again, I can't really do that. I can't speak for those voices. I mean, I'll encourage anyone who can do a panel or anthology about that. But there's always going to be someone saying shit about your comics, whether it's right or wrong. I mean, that's the whole thing about political correctness. As long as you're open to learning more about it instead of shutting people down, then I think it's going to be a good experience.
And I think it's good to hear from your audience. And I always love any kind of feedback, good or bad. And I've also had this practice of whatever anybody says, I always say, thank you so much for writing. If they send me an email or whatever. And, even the people who are like, you should burn in hell, thank you so much. Thank you for enjoying my comics and letting me know what you think of them. And it's often
it's often amazing that if you respond in a positive manner, these like hateful people will start talking to you and then say, well, the reason I was upset was because this and this and this, and it's usually because they're unhappy in their own lives. And then, you know, if you have the time and you want to help them, that's fine. But just having that openness to reactions, even the negative ones, I think is really helpful and interesting. And I mean, it means you have to have a thick skin.
That's nice of you to do.
It's funny. It's also so funny. I mean, I love responding really positively to like the sickest, you know, it's just cracks me up.
Thank you so much for taking the time to give my book a 1-star review. I really appreciate it. Mom. Thank you, Mom. We recently we had a come to Jesus moment where I was like, I know you've given me 2 1-star reviews. She's like, no, I didn't. Free speech. I was hacked. It was just like everything. Anyway, I do want to mention a project I did, because I didn't mention at the top. I really feel like we're going like left and right, left and right. We're all together in a car and I'm driving us on a bus on a cliff. I did a project for 10 years called Tell It Like It Is. I'm telling you all about it, so you'll go do one. I started volunteering at a senior citizen day center for people with dementia and cognitive and physical disabilities. And I would sit with them every week, every Friday for an hour, and then draw comics about their lives, about things they said. And I was real stiff. I showed up, I was real polite, talked real loud, and didn't curse. And then at a certain point, I realized like, oh, these are people who, it's okay if I use adult language because they're so adult. They're beyond adults. Like, they're next level. Like, they've heard the F word before. And so then it ended up being this intergenerational friendship comic. So I did publish it about them, and so I would tell their histories and their stories about things they wanted to talk about. But then eventually, my collaborator and I were just embedded artists taking down things they said. So, you know, like, we were at the Marie Smith Center when Obama got elected for the first time, and people were crying because they never thought they would see a black president in their lifetime as black senior citizens, and they were so grateful. And then, you know, maybe a few years later, people were like, Donald Trump, he's a weirdo, drawing them, saying that kind of thing. Or being there when senior citizens were talking about police brutality, or seeing senior citizens talk about what their plans that they had in their head in case there was a mass shooting at the senior center. And I have that. Like Judy, who, you know, is a cancer survivor, who's 80 years old, is just like, okay, I tip the table over and hide behind it. Like I would get the people in wheelchairs and put them in this closet. You know, I would find a good place to hide in the garden shed. And it just, these things that are heartbreaking but very real and true. And doing this project was one of the best things I've ever done. Like the book release for this project, people were coming up in their walkers, people were wheeling their friends up, the seniors were signing the books for other seniors with tears in their eyes. Because these are communities that people have never, a lot of these people didn't grow up with a lot of money or with a lot of privilege. So telling someone not only are people here to listen to you, but they're actually going to amplify your voice and publish it, was really valuable for their community. And I think anybody should do that. I want you all to do it. Just go find a senior citizen, go find a senior center, and just go sit there for a while. It's pretty fun. I want to open it up to questions. You guys join up. I have plenty more questions for panelists, but I find this group of very talented wise women. I want to make sure you have an opportunity to ask any questions from the audience. Yes.
Can I just tag on to what you were just talking about? Did the seniors participate with you, or was it you listened? Like they didn't do any art themselves, or
Some of them did art.
they did while you were visiting them then?
An important thing, when we started the project, we had been doing zine making workshops, and so I thought I was going to go there for a couple weeks and be like, here's how to make zines, and they were going to be like, fuck yeah, and then make their own zines.
Right.
But they actually were like, okay, you know, like I have dementia, I'm literally illiterate, like I cannot read or write, I don't have access to a copy machine, I don't feel like collating or stapling, like it just was not happening for them. And so we had to change the project to that community instead of trying to kind of colonize and force them into our thing. And so we changed the whole project based on their abilities and their wants and desires. And what they wanted to do was just have some pals that sat with them. And so we never stopped going. We thought we were going to go for 6 months, but it really hurt their feelings when people would come and kind of just like extract the interesting things out of their lives and then leave. So they would be like, why did you even bother coming? Like they just didn't understand the kind of weird climbing thing that people would do. And they'd be like, I'm working with seniors, you know, and leave. So we just never left. until they left or died. So that's kind of, sorry. But yeah, some of them drew in it, but for the most part, we did all the lifting and documenting. Other questions? Yeah.
So about building a community, how to start, for example, you have your ideas, your comics, everything, and then you just want to put it out there, but New York is such a big city, you don't know who to talk to, whether your teachers or your ex-classmates, and but when it comes to like share things with people, for example, me, I'm an international, so I have like people back home and I have people here, and I want to share it in the internet, like build the online community. I mean, maybe back home, I'm from Colombia, they don't use like blogs too much. They're not used to that part of the internet. So I don't know, like, if it's good for me to put my work out there. We also were raised to say like, your job is your work is only yours. And if you put it out in the internet, everybody's gonna steal it, or nobody's gonna pay attention to it. Who even cares about this thing,
Mm-hmm.
So how is the whole process for you to put something online, if it's good or not, like, because it feels like a good start for people who doesn't know how to like go in person to other people and talk to. But how does that work, or if you had guys like good experience with this like internet community kind of like blogs and stuff like that?
Yes, put your stuff online and make sure that there's something on your website that lets people contact you. I can't tell you how many times I've looked for cartoonists or comics as an editor, as an organizer, and I find stuff online and all they have is maybe a Twitter handle. Put an email address. Often people don't want to talk publicly about business. They want to email you privately. So anybody who has a website, put an email address on it. Contact other cartoonists you like their work and say, ask them a question, or say, I have a zine, do you want to trade? Most people love to talk about themselves and their work, so it's pretty easy to send a message to most cartoonists, unless they're super, super busy, and just say, hey, I love your work, how do you do it, or where do you publish, or, any kind of question you have, and start a dialogue, or offer to trade your work for somebody else's work, and then build on that. And if you're in the same location, parties are great. Just have a cartoonist party. Get as many cartoonists as you have that you can get together in one place at one time. Have everyone bring their work and talk, and 3 of them you're going to hate, 2 of them you're going to like, and it builds from there. If you can't do it in a geographic location, do it online, like have an open chat day or whatever technology you want to use to get everybody together. Or have little projects like, hey, let's do a jam. Get 5 cartoonists. One person does a panel, then it sends it to the next person, they do a panel, then you have a whole comic. Silly little fun games that are like comics related, and then you have all done this thing together. You sell it together, whatever you do, put it online together, but it's doing projects together builds community. And the projects could be anything from getting drunk to like having coffee.
Sorry, I was just going to ask another question.
Sure.
And it's to you particularly, because you said you were doing like bilingual comics, almost. And how does that work? Like, is people following in both languages, or just like people who live here in North America that like, follows? Like Latinos, but in Latin America, in North America, not Latin America.
Right. I do get fans from both like North and Latin America as well. And it's because of La Casa, because so many like contributors kind of talk about the anthology and kind of like difference about the internet. And so like hopefully with this anthology, since it's kind of semi like bilingual, people who only speak Spanish or English can like both enjoy it at the same time. So yeah, if you like, I would recommend starting an anthology just to get some like just basically if you think of an anthology as a bagel, like multiple like business cards basically. It's just like you get to promote your work but also like other people's work as well from all over. So I I'm still friends with like people from like contributors from the anthology as well, and we hang out sometimes. So I think it's really great. It's kind of like a small community as well. So I would recommend, starting an anthology. Kind of even going on like Facebook. There's kind of like Facebook groups for just like specific types of like communities. There you can like share your work. You can give advice, and that always like helps a long way. Like Instagram, Twitter is really great for like spreading the word around, especially in terms of just like looking for contributors for anthologies and projects. And also just I agree with you with trading comics. That's also like a really great way to like meet people, and also just like potential clients and like contributors as well.
Yeah, it looks like if you can volunteer here, that is great. If you volunteer somewhere, I find that working for free has been a great way to meet people.
How do you work through being gated within a community? It's like a big thing, because I guess it's not like, oh, how do you avoid being gated? It's more like it happens. You went to Washington for no reason. Everyone out there scrap fighting over identity, politics, kind of wild. Like, what do you do after that? To be like, oh, not every person of color and also like queer person of color is trying to fight me. Like,
Yeah. I just try to find, I take what I like and leave the rest. And friendship and beyond. There's a lot I don't like.
And you might not like 100% of everybody. Like when I put these conferences or any event together, I'm working with hundreds of people. I don't like all of them. Some of them I like 100%, and some I like just 20% of them that's really good. Like this guy is an asshole, but he's good at like putting together a spreadsheet. So you take from people what they can offer you. And, like someone might be really technically savvy and can teach you some Photoshop tricks, but you don't really want to hang out with them and you hate their family or something. That's okay. You have different friends for different things. And there's going to be a very small subgroup that are your, like, heart and soul. And a lot of other people are going to be like, they're casual friends and you maybe, do a zine fest with them or something, but they don't have to be they don't have to be 100%.
Yeah, standing up.
You're mentioning before about like Twitter and Instagram and stuff, especially now a lot of communities seem to be coming together through like social media. But how do you really balance like all of these social media things with your own work? Like I feel like there's a slightly different community on Facebook than on Twitter as there is on Instagram. Like how do you balance all of that plus like all your work and projects and everything?
I'm still figuring that out. It's really hard.
You have, I think you kind of have a pyramid in your head, like, what is your main goal in life? Is it to make your work? Is it to, your family, whatever. So you have, again, I'm always like checklist in your head, so you don't have to rethink this every single time. You figure it out. Like for me right now, I gotta get my work done. And so I'm saying no to a shitload of stuff that otherwise I'm like, if you have a deadline, then everything else has to go by the side. And you have to be kind of cruel sometimes. Being an artist is very selfish because you have to say to people, no, I can't, make a stupid birthday party because I have to draw, So you figure out what it is you need to do to get what you want, and then gently say no to all the rest. And that sometimes means getting off your goddamn phone or, turning off stuff so that it's not interrupting you. And I know a ton of really talented artists that didn't get to where they should be, didn't get the recognition they should be, just because they had to survive and have a regular job, or they had family issues or what have you, and didn't have that luxury of time and space to draw. And realistically, the cartoonists who are very successful, they have talent, but they also have perseverance. If you draw your comics for 40 years, constantly producing work, first of all, you'll get much better, and secondly, people will notice you because you've just been putting it out there for so long.
Can I say something really quick about the jaded question? It's like a jaded mythology work. Is that I was thinking there's a lot of people in my community who I don't actually like. I forget the name, anonymous fellowship. It's like you don't have to like all of us, but you'll love us in a very special way. There's people I don't like, but I'll still fight for them. Once I was in a small town, and I tried to show this John Waters movie, and this student like didn't get it and was like, "It's a hate crime that you show this John Waters movie." And I was like, "Oh, I really don't agree with this person." I was like, "But would I rather have this person who's like so uptight and into queer politics, or someone who's like totally apolitical with a Confederate flag on their truck?" Okay, you know what? I'm actually like, this person I don't agree, but I'm glad they exist.
But what if they're both the same person? Who's the only one?
Well, I don't know about that. But I mean, I just like find the people who I like very much, who may not have the exact same identity politics as me, and then I get my like spiritual fulfillment through them, and then I'm still working for all the obnoxious queer people. Like, or all the queer people I love and all the ones that I think are obnoxious, I will fight for all of them at the end of the day. I feel like I'm hogging our microphone. Take it. Yes.
What advice would you give for people kind of at the starting point for trying to figure out either if they're cartoonist or whatever in terms of writing, particularly making connections, especially if you come from a background, maybe if you go to school, so building that community, particularly professionally, like how to reach out to, like, if it's publishing companies or whatever, and showing that you want, that's what you're interested in and want to do, when you don't really have that background, also coming across as professional and not just like climbing the ladder.
Well, I feel like, I'm not sure, maybe I'm misunderstanding you, but like, there should be no shame in climbing the ladder. I mean, that's what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to get as many people as possible to see your work, and that's a noble pursuit. And I think just coming to things like this, I mean, when I was starting out, I went to comic conventions, and that's how I got a publisher, by like going up to their booth and giving them my comic over and over again. And yeah, just going to as many public events as possible. There's a lot of cartoonists will do readings, or they'll have book openings at bookstores. You know, I remember I went to a Alison Bechdel reading, and you know, saw a bunch of people, like saw a bunch of cartoonists that like I wouldn't have otherwise had contact with, and just went up to them afterwards and was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And like you start to slowly build relationships, and then you'll keep seeing the same people over and over again. That's how I got together with the group of women that I meet with on a monthly basis. Is just basically through conventions and through events. So yeah, I would just say you don't need to have come from anything to seek out those public spaces.
And also when you're starting out, there's, you know, self-publish your stuff. Get a whole bunch of little zines out there. And then when you go to a publisher with your big book, you can say, hey, you know, I've been selling zines for 10 years or for 5 years or 3 years or whatever, and I have an audience already. So the little stuff you do at the beginning that often is self-published, you then can use that to get you a publisher and say to them, I already have a following, and they're going to be much more interested in publishing your work.
Yeah, conventions and also like after parties. Booze really helps.
After parties.
Just pass out like your cards and like whatever, promote yourself out there. Like everyone's gonna be great.
Because you just get drunk in your booth.
Yeah.
But even if you're really introverted or you live far away from everybody else, you can write people letters, an email, you know, instant message, whatever. You write to somebody, and if you say, I love your work, and then you can say anything you want. You know, if you just tell people, hey, I love your work, and I want advice on this. You know, and it is, maybe some people won't answer, but if you put out 20 of those letters, I bet you get, you know, 15 back.
I have one quick question for you guys before we have our final questions. We're in our final 5 minutes. But I forgot to ask, you know, some people start doing comics and they have this professional thing in their mind that they want. But everyone on this panel, when you started drawing comics or self-publishing them, did you want anything? Or what did you want? Did you have an end game in mind?
The end game was definitely at the beginning just to write a comic. And I think that's important. Which is why, for me at least, self-publishing for the several years that I did it before moving to a, you know, actual publisher was really important because I had complete autonomy over everything I was doing, and I was just doing it not because anybody was waiting on it, but just from a desire to do it.
Well, I have a difficult time expressing myself verbally, as you can see throughout this panel, but that's why I started doing my diary comics, to
just like have it on paper for everyone's like the link and to read. But also just like having like psychology and work, even online helps get contacts too. Like I've gotten a agent because of like the comics that I posted online, and also through that I also met so many publishers and stuff. So I think as long as you're doing work that you're proud of, I think you kind of reach that like happiness as like an artist, as a professional. And sometimes there are days when I don't feel professional, but as long as you kind of like make it like break it kind of mentality, I think you kind of just work into that role, you know.
Jennifer, what did you want?
I just was a smart ass for allowed to say.
Surprising.
I saw a hand over here.
Yes.
So for someone who, I guess, is considered outside of the community, I'm hoping to get into editorial and publishing side of comics. What can we do outside of your community to get you to trust us with, you know, your baby, your personal projects, and trust us to be able to produce this the right way?
Have money. I know that sounds crazy, but I honestly think if somebody's like, do you want to be in this anthology? I will give you this like a couple $100 per page or something. I'm like, okay. I'm like, you have my trust. Here you go. And so that could be a matter of that person having a credit card or a Kickstarter or a publisher or a grant or something. I mean, or you know, editing for your friends. Like, or meeting people around here. Like, you never need an editor. I want to do an anthology about this kind of person.
Also, pay attention to production value. You know, it's so wonderful to have your work appear in a publication that has good paper, large format for comics. You know, good production value goes a long way. There's just so much crap out there. And beautiful comics are done in injustice by being badly packaged.
There's a question back here, yes.
I've heard other communities or online, connecting online with your community. I've heard like Facebook pages, Instagram, and Twitter. Are there any others?
Patreon.
Tumblr. I mean, any software you can create a community within that software. So, you know, if you're trying to create your own community, just, you know, whichever software whichever social media, whatever format you're comfortable in, and then invite, you know, people to join. And you can have closed, private things or open ones.
We're out of time. I want to thank all of my panelists for being so generous.